Hello bookworms! Today I'm going to be sharing my June wrap-up with you. This is Andrew and I's first weekend home since May 2nd, so that's why I have not been able to film too many videos, and I'm home this weekend. I have so many plans this weekend, but one of my friends had to push back our brunch date from 8 to 11, so I'm going to film as many videos as I possibly can until I have to leave. So that way I don't go weeks again without posting anything. So in June I had an okay reading month, but I think I'm going to have like a really great reading month in July just from how the first half of the month has gone so far. I think I'm finally like out of my slump that I was kind of in. I know I've been saying it like time and time again, but I am I'm going back to my office starting next week, and I've been trying to like preemptively get into some good routines, and that's also helped improve with reading because reading was always like a past routine for me, and then it kind of who had routines last year. But I'm going to talk about all of the books that I read in June. I'm not going to rank them. I'm just going to go in chronological order of how I read them because I just don't have the mental capacity to rank at the moment. The first book that I read was The Last Houseguest by Megan Miranda. This was actually the first Megan Miranda book that I read, and I did enjoy it. I'm definitely going to read more of her books in the future. This is a thriller novel, and I think it was actually, it was one of Reese's book club picks, but like long ago, not like a current one. In this one, it takes place in a coastal town, and that's actually what I probably liked most about it was the setting and the atmosphere. It really made me want to like go on vacation despite the fact that there's like a murder that happened and they're trying to figure out what it was. So it takes place in Maine, and we are following Avery, who is somebody that works for like the very rich people that summer in this town called Littleport. And the summer prior to the one that we're currently in, her best friend and the one that kind of like introduced her to the world of the rich people, Sadie, committed suicide. But Avery is not so certain that that's actually what happened. She doesn't believe that Sadie would do that, and during this next summer, she's starting to find some clues that lead her to believe that there's more to the story than anyone really expected. It was really fun. Like, I felt like it was a little bit slow-paced, which didn't bother me. I really loved the setting, as I said like 3 times already. I did feel like it was a little bit predictable, but it didn't really take away from my overall enjoyment. I don't think it was like anything that is super notable that I'm going to be like talking about forever. It was just like one of those entertaining, fun in the moment kind of books, and I ended up giving this one 3.5 stars, and I'm definitely going to be checking out some of Megan Miranda's other books. If you've read any of them, let me know your recommendations because I would love to know where to go next from here. Next up, I listened to Crying in Hmart by Michelle Zauner. Michelle Zauner is from the band Japanese Breakfast, and I've always enjoyed her music, and I was excited to hear that she came out with a book. This technically started as an essay that Michelle wrote for The New Yorker, and it ended up going kind of viral, and then she expanded upon it and turned it into this book. It's a memoir, and it's largely about losing her mother. So obviously it was like really tough to read for me. Her mother ended up getting sick, and Michelle talks all about the different stages of grief, the different emotions that you have upon like finding out a diagnosis all the way until the end and then afterward too. And she goes very, very in depth about the kind of care that you have to give to somebody who is sick, and it was really, really tough to read at points for me. But on the other hand, I did really enjoy the fact that it was so honest, and I feel like Michelle went through like very similar things that I went through, and I know I said this in my mid-year book freakout tag video, but it just kind of made me feel like less alone, because when you're in the thick of something like that, like something life-changing and horrible, it feels very isolating, like seeing everybody else out living their lives, and you're very like involved in what's going on because you want to be, obviously, not saying that I would change anything, but just saying that it really does take a toll on you, and like to see that, like to read somebody else's experience who went through a very similar thing just makes me feel not better, but like I guess a sense of camaraderie, if that makes sense. I did really like this one, but it was like really tough to read at points. I listened to the audiobook, and I have been going into my office like 2 to 3 times a week since May. So I would like listen to this as I was walking, and then I would like end up like by the time I would get to my office, I would just be in tears. Like I cried so many times reading this book. Yeah, I'm not surprised. I thought it was very raw, very honest, and I really appreciated it. And I liked Michelle's writing style, and I also really liked listening to it because then she narrated it. So I ended up giving this one 4 stars. Then I listened to Trick Mirror by Gia Tolentino, and this book I loved so much. This is another nonfiction book. This is a collection of short essays. So each chapter kind of tackles like a different topic, but oh my gosh, it was so relatable. I loved it so much. One chapter was all about reality TV. Gia was on a reality show as a teen, which I had no idea going into this, but she's like an incredible writer. I think that wow, this was just fantastic. She also has a chapter about the internet, which I always find fascinating. I love reading about the ways that internet culture has just affected society as a whole, and the positives and the negatives that have come out of it. There was a chapter called Always Be Optimizing, and that was basically about how women are under so much pressure to always be doing their best, to always be looking better, to always be bettering themselves. Like, that was great and really relatable. There was a chapter about like literary heroines, so she talked a lot about like Anne of Green Gables, who is one of my favorites, and I loved that. But then there were a couple of essays in here that were misses for me. There was a chapter on drugs called Ecstasy, and that was really not relatable for me, and I don't feel like I really got much out of that chapter at all. But then it picked back up again, and then there was like a chapter on weddings, and it was just like amazing. Like, this was so well written and so well thought out. She just articulated her thoughts in the perfect way, and I really loved it, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read One Last Stop by Casey McQuiston, and this is Casey McQuiston's newest book. I'm sure that you've heard lots of people talking about it so far. This one is a sapphic romance following a character named August who moves to Brooklyn, and she meets a girl named Jane on the subway. Jane is from the 1970s, and she is trapped on the subway. She can't get off. August and Jane's romance takes place on the subway, which I have to say, like, really just grossed me out at points. As somebody who takes the New York subway system often, I can't imagine anyone doing anything like remotely physical on the subway. It's so dirty and disgusting and full of crazy people. I just was like, ooh. Like, their romance is very cute. I do like the connection that the two of them form. I was just grossed out by like the physical stuff on the subway. I loved August's group of friends. She moves into this apartment with these other people, and it's really like they become like her found family, and they just accept her right away, and they get very involved in her life, and I really enjoyed their dynamic more so than like anything else that was going on in the book. But it was all about August trying to solve this mystery and try to figure out how to get Jane off of the train, essentially. It was really fun. I like Casey McQuiston's writing style a lot. I think that she does a really great job with modern dialogue, and it just feel like the characters all feel like very real people. So while I really loved a lot of elements of it, it was hard to get past the subway stuff. It was funny when I first started reading it, I texted Alexa. I was like, oh my gosh, Jane's been stuck on the subway for like 40 or 50 years. No one told me that this was actually a horror story, because that's like a literal nightmare. Like, I could not imagine spending more time on the subway than I need to. If I have the option of walking, I will walk versus taking the subway. So yeah, I liked it. I definitely like Red, White, and Royal Blue better, but I do think that this was really fun, and I do really like the characters in here, and I gave this one 4 stars. Then I read Take Me Home Tonight by Morgan Matson, and this is probably my favorite book of the month. I really, really loved this one. I was not expecting to, because I've not found too many young adult books in this past almost 2 years now that I really loved, but this one I did. This one also takes place in New York City, and we are following 2 best friends who are from Connecticut. They sneak into the city together, and then they end up getting separated, and neither of them have cell phones. So both of them go on these kind of like life-changing adventures, and it was so much fun. Like, I could not put this book down. I loved it so much. Also, so the two main characters are Kat and Stevie, and they're also theater kids, which is another thing that I feel like I just love. Like, I've always loved and been friends with theater people. So I think that was also like, that also added to the enjoyment of it for me. I mean, it was not a Cinderella story at all, but it had like one similar element where at the beginning they kind of offhandedly say that if anything happens, they'll meet at the clock at Grand Central at midnight. It was just so much fun. Like, I really, really loved this book. This is an ARC copy that was sent to me by the publisher, but I'm actually ordering my own like finished copy because I definitely want to have this one for my collection. Loved it. I gave this one 4.5 stars. Then I read The Lion's Den by Catherine St. John, and I also really enjoyed this book. This one was wild. So we are following Belle, who gets invited to go on this all expenses paid like luxury yacht cruise with her best friend Summer and a couple of other girls that they're close friends with, and then Summer's mom and her sister and a girl that Summer's sister brings. But there are very weird things that are happening. All of it is paid for by Summer's much, much older, very wealthy boyfriend, and he is super controlling. There are like really weird rules for the girls. They're not allowed to post anything on social media. They don't have internet access. Their doors are locked at night. They can't like leave their cabin if they need to. Like, so much more that you find out as you keep reading. I thought this was excellent. It's kind of a thriller because of all of the stuff, like wondering what's going on, but I wouldn't say that it is thrilling. I would say that it's more like there's some suspense toward the end. 75% of this really reads more like a contemporary novel with like some off things happening, but I loved it. I thought the writing style was really engaging, and I really liked Belle as a character. We also get like flashbacks to Belle and Summer's relationship prior to this boat cruise, because while they are best friends, they are like very different people. They've had some bumps in the road of their friendship, like leading up to this point. So good. I can't wait to read Catherine St. John's next book, which I also got, I think I got it like last month, but I wanted to read in publication order. And I'm just so glad that I enjoyed this. This is another book that I ended up giving 4 stars. And then the last book that I read was Tribe by Sebastian Junger. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly. I listened to this book on audio. He's actually the author of A Perfect Storm, but this is a nonfiction book, and it's all about society, and it was fascinating. It's so short. It's like, I don't even know if it's 200 pages. I think it's like under that. It was really quick. It was only 4 chapters, but it was so good. So he basically talks about, well, I mean, it's called Tribe. So basically the whole premise of the book is how modern society causes people to be very isolated from one another and has been really detrimental to our society okay, so one of the things that he talks about too is that obviously hardship is awful and nobody wants to like endure that kind of stuff, but on the other hand, hardship also causes humans to come together and to really form like a community and to look out for one another. And he's basically saying that modern society doesn't give the average person the ability to form a tribe or have a sense of community, because there are people that we expect to do things for us. Like, if you see somebody who's in trouble, you might be nervous to do something, and you know that there are other people that are employed to help that person. So it's kind of like along those lines about how like the majority of people don't really take responsibility for other people. They see themselves as an individual versus a tribe, and how that is really detrimental to society because we do really need to be working together. He talks about tribe in a couple of different senses of the word. So in one sense, he talks about tribe in relation to Indigenous people. He talks about tribe in relation to people in the military. I'm sure I'm like forgetting something, but it was was just really, really thought-provoking and really interesting. My brother had actually recommended this book to me, and I'm so glad that he did, because I still think about it. Like, it's very interesting to hear everything that the author had to say on this topic. It's something that I guess I like subconsciously kind of thought about it in certain senses, but it was really like a deep dive into something that I would never be able to come up with on my own. So it was great, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. So those are all of the books that I read in June. I read a total of 7 books, which is better than last month, so I'll take it. But I'm definitely gonna be reading more than 7 books in July, she says now. Let me know if you read anything that I mentioned, and also let me know what your favorite book that you read was in June. That's all that I have for this video, and I will see you guys soon in a new one. Bye!